I didn't plan to fall for her. Not the woman twice my age with eyes that had seen too much and a voice that could make silence feel like a sin. But the night she pressed a warm basket into my hands barefoot on my porch, something shifted. And neither of us knew how far it would go. I hadn't planned on moving. Not at 25, not broke, and definitely not alone. But when my great-uncle Marshall passed away and left me his house in a town so small it barely showed up on GPS, it felt like the universe whispering, start over, or disappear. So I packed what little I owned into a borrowed pickup truck and drove to Fairbrook, a place where everything moved slow, but nothing stayed buried forever. The house stood quiet on the edge of town, 2 stories of peeling paint and crooked charm. It looked like something out of a dream you'd only half remember. Wide eaves, a front porch that sagged like it missed someone, and windows that watched you back. The first night I slept on a mattress on the floor. No curtains, just moonlight pouring in, silvering the dust in the air. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that lets your thoughts get loud. By day 3, I was sweaty, sore, and overwhelmed, scrubbing floors, tossing moldy drapes, chasing spiders the size of childhood nightmares. But something about it grounded me. For the first time, I wasn't crashing on someone's couch or swiping credit for rent. This was mine. But Marshall hadn't just left me a house. He left me ghosts. Old books with handwritten notes in the margins, a drawer full of faded photographs with faces scribbled out, a piano with ivory keys worn down by fingers I'd never know, and in the backyard, grass up to my knees swaying like it was waiting to swallow me whole. That's where I first saw her. It was early evening, the sun was doing that slow descent thing, bathing everything in gold. And there she was, standing just beyond the rickety wooden fence that separated our yards. She wore a white sundress, the kind that looked innocent until the breeze hit just right. Her skin had that late summer glow, kissed golden at the collarbones and shoulders. And on her head, a wide-brimmed straw hat that cast just enough shadow to make her unreadable. She held a basket in one hand, and with the other she waved. "You must be Marshall's nephew," she called. Her voice was soft-honeyed, but it carried, and I felt it low in my chest, like the hum of a song I hadn't heard in years. "Yeah," I said, walking closer. "I'm Logan." She didn't shake my hand. Instead, she rested her elbows on the fence and looked at me, really looked like she already knew too much. "I'm Celeste," she said. "I live just over there." She nodded toward a house that looked like it had been plucked from a magazine, white trim, green shutters, and a front garden too perfect to be accidental. Lavender, dahlia, rosemary. It smelled like memory and secrets. I swallowed. That basket. For me, she smiled. One of those slow, knowing smiles that made you feel like you'd just agreed to something without realizing it. Figured you hadn't cooked yet. She was right. I'd been living off gas station burritos and off-brand coffee. I reached for the basket. It was heavier than I expected. Still warm underneath the cloth napkin tucked over the top. There was something rich in the air, rosemary maybe. Cinnamon. "Thanks," I said, suddenly aware of my paint-stained jeans and the sweat drying at the back of my neck. "You're welcome." She started to turn, then paused. Sometimes, she said, we just need an excuse to knock. Later that night, I opened the basket on the porch. Inside, a loaf of bread still steaming from the oven, a tiny jar of golden honey, a square of lemon butter folded in wax paper, and a note. "Welcome home." See, I stared at it for longer than I care to admit. There was something about her, not just the way she moved graceful like she'd never rushed a day in her life, not just the way her dress clung to her curves when she walked away. It was her presence, solid, unapologetic, all woman. She was maybe 40, maybe more, but nothing about her felt old. She had the kind of quiet heat that sneaks up on you, the kind you don't see coming until it's already under your skin. I ate the bread, slowly sitting on the porch steps, the honey melting into the butter. The night air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and old wood, and across the yard, through the lace curtain of her kitchen window, I saw her silhouette shoulders bowed book in hand, barefoot, a glass of wine on the table, and I knew without knowing why that I wasn't just here to fix up an old house. Something else had begun. The next few days moved in a strange rhythm: work, eat, collapse. And somewhere between tearing up old floorboards and trying to figure out how to reconnect ancient plumbing, I started noticing her more. Sometimes it was just a flash of her figure through her garden, bending low to tend her herbs dress, clinging in ways that made my thoughts wander. Sometimes it was her voice drifting on the breeze, humming something old, something familiar. And other times, it was silence, a deliberate silence that still felt like an invitation. One afternoon, while tossing a busted screen door into a trash pile, I turned and saw her again. Hands on hips, a basket in the crook of her arm. That damn hat. "You look like you could use a cold drink," she said. "I could use a new back," I grunted. She laughed low and rich and crossed the lawn like it belonged to her. "I make a mean mint tea," she said. "Come by later if you're curious." And just like that, the line was drawn. I didn't know it then, but this wasn't going to be a neighborly friendship. No. This was a slow, hungry unraveling. The kind that starts in the eyes and ends with hands in places no one else has touched in years. I told myself I wasn't going, that I had work to do, that I didn't want to read too much into a glass of tea in a look that lasted 2 seconds too long, that this woman Celeste was just being neighborly, kind. But by 7:30, I was standing on her porch trying not to sweat through my only decent t-shirt. The door was slightly ajar. A hint of jazz floated out, warm, smoky saxophone curling into the twilight. And then her voice. "Come in, Logan." Not hey, not hold on a sec, no knock, no hesitation, just come in. Her kitchen was dimly lit, all copper and wood and smells that wrapped around you like an embrace. She stood barefoot at the stove, her dress softer tonight like the petals of something that only blooms after dark. Her hair was up, a few strands falling around her face. She looked undone, in the most deliberate way. "Mint tea's on the counter," she said, not turning around. I added a splash of something stronger. "Hope you don't mind." I didn't. The glass was cool in my hand, condensation running slow down the sides, mirroring the way my thoughts were sliding. She turned, and for a moment I forgot what words were. No makeup, no need, just her bare-skinned, sun-warmed shoulders, collarbones carved like poetry. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head. I nodded. Drank. "Long day," she teased. I nodded again. I hadn't spoken in at least a full minute, because every inch of this kitchen felt like temptation, disguised as comfort. She took a sip from her glass, watching me over the rim. "Come out back," she said. "It's cooler." Her backyard was even more magical at night. String lights draped across old trees, wind chimes whispering, and a swing bench, half in shadow. She sat first, crossed her legs. That skirt rode up just enough to reveal the soft curve above her knee, smooth, golden, unbothered. I sat beside her, and suddenly the swing creaked under the weight of all the things we weren't saying. "I used to come out here a lot," she said quietly. "Before everything changed." I glanced over. "You were married, right?" She didn't answer. Not exactly. I was loved the way people love a lighthouse, from a distance, for safety, but never closely enough to see the cracks. There it was, the first crack in her. She sipped again. I followed. She didn't ask about my past. Didn't need to. "I've never had anything permanent," I said. "Jobs, places, people, they don't stick." She looked at me then. Really looked. "Maybe you never let them." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick, heavy with static, like the pause before lightning. I watched the way her throat moved when she swallowed, the way her fingers toyed with the hem of her dress, the way her eyes drifted, then came back. "What are you thinking?" I asked. Her smile was small, sad. "That I'm too old for this." "For what?" "This," she said, gesturing between us. "Whatever it is. Whatever it might become." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached out, slow, deliberate, and let my hand rest on the bench behind her. Not touching her, just close. She didn't move. "We don't have to name it," I said. But in that moment, we both felt it. That soft pull, the magnet between skin and story. She leaned back, just a little, and that's when it happened. Her shoulder brushed my chest, bare skin against cotton, and the air shifted. She turned her face inches from mine. I could smell the mint and bourbon on her breath. Her lips parted, but she didn't kiss me. Instead, she said, "Don't rush. let it ache a little. Then she stood, left her glass behind, and disappeared into the house. Just like that. I sat out there a long time, drinking the rest of her tea, watching the swing move after she left, trying not to chase the heat she'd left in the air. Inside, a single lamp stayed on. Her silhouette passed by, once slow, graceful like a memory. And that night, when I finally walked back to my own house, I realized I hadn't exhaled in over an hour. The next morning, I found a small basket on my porch. No note, just a jar of homemade plum jam and a tiny envelope of flower seeds. I stared at it like it was some kind of spell. Because it was. Every little thing she gave me was something I didn't know I needed. Days passed. I buried myself in home repairs, sandpapered wood, rewired dead sockets, pulled weeds until my hands went raw. But every evening, like clockwork, she'd appear. Sometimes just a wave from her garden, sometimes a neat anything from over the fence, other times nothing at all, just her presence hovering on the edges. We started trading things. I left her fresh tomatoes. She brought over a lemon tart. I returned a book I borrowed. She gave me one I wasn't ready for. It became a ritual, a dance, each gift a step, each moment a question. Are we still pretending this is nothing? One night, thunder rolled low in the distance. I stood barefoot on my porch, sipping cheap whiskey, watching the sky bruise purple. That's when she showed up. No basket, no invitation, just her. She wore jeans tonight and a tank top, her hair loose and wild. She looked younger and older, all at once. Without a word, she stepped beside me, took the glass from my hand, tasted it, made a face. "You drink garbage," she said. I laughed. She didn't. Instead, she turned and looked at me, really looked like she was about to say something that would tear the night open, and she did. "You scare me," she said, but not in a bad way. "You scare me," she said, "because sometimes I forget I'm not allowed to want this." Those words, they didn't ask permission. They just stayed. Like heat between two bodies that won't admit they're already touching. I didn't say anything, because my throat was tight, because my heart was beating too loud, because every part of me wanted to reach for her, but I didn't. Instead, I asked, "Want to come inside?" She hesitated, not because she didn't want to, but because something about stepping over that threshold would mean something. "Just coffee," I said. "Nothing more," I lied. Inside, the lights were low. I clicked on the small lamp near the couch. Soft glow. Safe. The house still smelled like sawdust and old dreams, but somehow it felt warmer with her in it. Like her skin radiated into the walls. She walked slowly, fingertips brushing along the bookshelf as if memorizing the feel of it. Her nails short, clean, deliberate in the way they scraped softly across the spines. "You've been busy," she said. Trying to make it less haunted, I smiled. She glanced at me. "Maybe ghosts are just pieces of us we haven't made peace with." That made me stop. The way she said it, like someone who knew exactly what she hadn't made peace with. I handed her the mug. Coffee, no cream, no sugar. She didn't sit. Not yet. Instead, she wandered, curious, trailing fingers across windowsills and dusty photo frames, reading me, through the room. Then she paused at the old upright piano by the window. This was his. I nodded. Marshall used to play late into the night. Jazz mostly, sometimes blues when he drank. She pressed a single key. The note rang out a little, off, a little beautiful. Then she sat down slowly, and her back arched just slightly as she adjusted hips settling against the worn bench, her shoulders rising like waves before the break. And without meaning to, I watched her. The slope of her neck, the way her dress hugged the curve of her lower back, the soft flick of her ankle as she crossed her legs. She knew I was watching. She didn't play, just sat. Fingertips resting on the keys like maybe, just maybe, she wanted to be touched the same way. I never learned, she said. Too many rules. I hated being told where to place my hands. And just like that, 100 images crashed into me. Not one of them appropriate, All of them real. I stepped closer. Want me to teach you? She turned her head just enough to make my heart thud. Maybe. We never played the piano that night, but we sat side by side, close enough for our knees to touch, close enough that the silence between us felt like a dare. At one point, she looked down. "You're trembling," she whispered. "I know. I haven't touched anyone in a long time, Logan." I nodded. I haven't felt anything this real in longer than I want to admit. She reached for my hand. Her fingers were cool, but her palm, it burned. We didn't kiss, not yet. But she traced the line of my thumb with hers, over and over, like she was memorizing me, mapping me. That one touch lasted longer than most kisses I'd had in my entire life. The rain started around midnight. A real storm this time, loud, possessive, crashing. We stood by the window watching it hit the world, and when lightning split the sky, I saw her reflection in the glass. Her face open, lips parted just slightly, a shadow of longing behind her eyes. "I should go," she said. But she didn't move. I stepped behind her, not touching, not yet. But she could feel me, just like I could feel the rise and fall of her breath. "You don't have to," I whispered. She stayed. We lay on the couch, not tangled, not rushing. Her head on my chest, my hand on her hip, not daring to move too much. Because the moment was alive, and fragile, and sacred. "You smell like rosemary and cedar," I murmured. "You smell like someone I shouldn't trust." I smiled. "I've never lied to you. Not even a little only about the coffee." She laughed, soft, barely there, but it lit up the room. Hours passed, or maybe they folded in on themselves. At some point, I dozed off. When I woke, she was still there, watching the ceiling, eyes glassy. "Do you believe in soulmates?" she asked. I didn't answer. Not right away. "I believe some people show up to shake us," I said. "To wake up the parts we thought we'd buried." She closed her eyes. "I'm afraid of how much I want to stay." "Then stay anyway. It's not that simple." "It could be." Silence. Then I was pregnant once. The room froze. She said it like a memory she didn't want to unfold. A soft thread unraveling. It was years ago. He didn't want it, and I didn't fight hard enough to keep it. I stayed still, let her say what she needed. I thought it broke me, that nothing soft would grow from me again. I turned to face her, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "There's still so much alive in you, Celeste." She looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time, she kissed me. It wasn't hungry or hurried. It was certain, patient. Her lips moved like a story long kept quiet, like she was writing truth on my mouth. I didn't rush, I didn't lead, I followed. And when we broke apart, both breathless, she whispered, "You don't know what you're getting into." I smiled. "I know I want to." The morning after didn't feel like the morning after. It felt like breathing for the first time without coughing, like standing barefoot on warm earth after a long, cold walk. She hadn't left. Not yet. I woke to the sound of her humming in the kitchen barefoot again, wearing one of my flannel shirts unbuttoned too big draped like permission. And when she turned and saw me watching her, she didn't cover up. She just smiled, lazy and quiet, like she knew every thought running through my head. "Coffee?" she asked, holding up the pot. "God, yes." I slipped into the chair. She poured. And then she leaned down, brushing her lips across my neck, soft as a secret. "Last night wasn't a mistake," she said, "but it can still ruin us if we're not honest." Truth served hot before breakfast. We ate toast and eggs. Talked about stupid things, old bands, bad movies, how she still used a flip phone because touchscreens don't have soul. But under it all, there was this pulse, an undercurrent, of what we'd done, what we wanted again, and what it meant to touch someone not just with your body, but with all the parts of you usually keep hidden. She stood to rinse her plate, and that's when it hit me. The curve of her spine under the soft cotton, the way her legs disappeared beneath the hem, the slight shift of her weight as she reached for the sink. It was poetry, just existing. I came up behind her, not to start anything, just to feel her. my hands on her waist, my chin resting against her shoulder, the smell of her hair lavender and skin and something I couldn't name. "You're dangerous," I whispered. She turned her face just enough for her lips to graze my cheek. "I know." We didn't sleep together again that morning. We didn't have to. Because intimacy doesn't always mean undressing. Sometimes it's just silence shared in a room that no longer feels empty. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I was anxious, but because I couldn't stop thinking about the way her voice dropped when she got serious. How her fingertips lingered on my wrist when she laughed. How she told me I was present like it was a compliment, not a condition. So I walked over. Past midnight. With no excuse. She opened the door in nothing but a robe and a look that said, "I knew you'd come." "I couldn't sleep," I offered. "I didn't want to," she replied. And just like that, we stopped pretending we didn't need this. The second time wasn't like the first. It wasn't slow, it wasn't cautious, it was hungry. We didn't undress. We peeled, layer by layer, like stripping back years, and when my hands finally traced the curve of her thigh, the dip of her hip, the soft hollow just below her ribs, she sighed like she'd been holding her breath for years. Her body told stories of time, of survival, of how a woman doesn't need to be perfect to be worshipped. Her scars were maps. Her laugh lines were history. And when I kissed the inside of her wrist, slow reverent, she arched toward me like a prayer. She cried, just a little, after, and didn't explain. I didn't ask, I just held her. Let her soften against me. Let the silence answer questions we weren't ready to say out loud. For days after everything felt sharper, like the world had turned the contrast up. The coffee was bolder, the sky more blue. Even the way her voice carried from her garden had a new weight. And when she touched me, even in passing, it felt electric. A brush of her fingers against my neck when handing me a book. A squeeze at the back of my arm as I reached for a shelf. A quiet sigh when we passed each other in the hallway. I started falling for her in the pauses, not the moments. But there was still the space. The one she left between us after sex. The one that lingered in her eyes when she stared out the window too long. The one I filled with wanting but never quite touched. And one night after dinner, after wine, after her lipstick stained the rim of her glass, I asked, "What happened? The marriage, the child? The part you never talk about?" She didn't flinch, but she didn't answer either. Instead, she stood, walked to the window, back turned. "I lost myself," she said, "in someone who made me feel small and in the version of love that hurt more than it healed." A pause, and by the time I figured out who I really was, he'd already left. Then she turned, eyes glassy but steady. And now, I don't know how to love someone without wondering when they'll disappear too. I stood, closed the distance, held her face in both hands. I'm still here. We didn't make love that night. We undid each other. We unraveled, not bodies, but walls, and lies we told ourselves, and fears we'd buried under flirty smiles and late-night kisses. I kissed every inch of her like a confession, and she let me. She let me. She whispered, "Stay," before I even asked. Winter came like a hush. Not loud, not dramatic. Just soft. A slow falling quiet that settled over Fairbrook like a blanket someone forgot to take off. The garden curled in on itself. The grass browned. Even the wild lavender outside her kitchen window stopped blooming. But inside our homes, inside us, something kept glowing. We didn't talk much about what we were. We didn't call it love. Didn't label the nights I stayed over, or the mornings she made pancakes without asking how I liked them. We just were, and somehow that was enough. Until it wasn't. It started with a phone call, late afternoon. I was fixing the hinge on my back gate when I heard her voice, soft, urgent. "I need you to come over." No explanation, just that tone. I dropped the wrench and ran. She was sitting on the floor, by the bookshelf, the one we moved together, her knees pulled up to her chest, eyes wide but empty. On the floor next to her, an envelope. Already opened? I knelt beside her. She didn't look at me. "They found him." My stomach sank. "Your ex." She nodded, slow, deliberate, He died in a car accident last week. The man who shaped her silence was gone. Just like that. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just sat with her. Let her head fall against my shoulder. Let the quiet cradle both of us. She didn't cry, not then. But later in the middle of the night when I felt her shaking beside me, I just wrapped myself around her and let her fall apart. No questions, no promises, just presence. Grief has a strange way of reshuffling love. For a while, she pulled back. Not completely, but enough. Enough that I noticed the distance return. The way her touch became more careful. The way she started staring at the door again like it owed her something. I didn't push, but I stayed, and little by little she came back. The thaw started in February, snow melting into muddy grass, birdsong creeping in through cracked windows, and her voice sounding less like a whisper and more like a choice. She started planning again. Her garden, her shelves, our dinners. She bought new mugs, hung wind chimes. Let me put a second toothbrush in her bathroom. And then one morning she stood in my kitchen holding her mug with both hands and said, "I want to build a greenhouse." I turned to her, smiling. "Okay, with you." My chest tightened. I thought we already were. That spring we did everything slowly. We planted seeds, painted railings, repaired an old bench that became our bench. We still didn't say love, but it lived in everything. In the way she folded my shirts without asking. In the way I started writing music again and left scraps of lyrics on her table. In the quiet. In the mess. In the way I stopped waiting for her to leave. One night she stood on her porch barefoot holding 2 glasses of wine. Same as the first night. Only this time when I crossed the yard, she met me halfway. We stood there under the stars, the air thick with blooming things and old ghosts. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said. I brushed a curl from her cheek. "Me either." Somewhere I think Marshall smiled. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. Not by him, not by my past, not by hers. We built something from ashes, from silence, from skin and storm and mistakes. Something gentle and messy and real. And in this slow, small town, that's more than most people ever get.